The offset curve command is a great way to make a duplicate of a curve that has a specific offset following exact curvature of your original. Now let me go ahead and show you what the tool can do before I start showing you some of its options and all the little features that it has. So I'll begin by making a curve. So let's see, let's do something that's kind of precise and mechanical looking. It'll help show off the tool just a little bit better. And let's say something like so, and out. So here's our base curve, and let's say this is some curve that we're going to be using to model some really cool high-tech piece of machinery, so it's got to be relatively precise. And what we want to do is add some thickness to this. We need another curve that can be used for maybe the inner shell of this, like this is the outside, we need another curve to make the inside of it. And you could, theoretically, just duplicate the curve, slide the duplicate away, and scale down, but then you've got some adjustment to do on your own. You got to line things up, like now you got to come in here and grab these control vertices and pull them a little tighter and maybe pull these back down to the ends. All of this work you have to do. The offset curve command is a way for you to get away from having to do this. Now what I'm going to do for starters is go down to Edit Curves, Offset, Offset Curve. We'll take a look at the options, but I'll run the tool first at its default settings before even worrying about any of the different settings. Let's go ahead and hit Apply, and there we go. Now check it out. We have a new version of the curve that sits just inside the original. Its ends line up perfectly. Notice that anywhere we had corners, those have been scaled out. Anywhere we had tight corners, those have been scaled in so that we get a nice constant distance all throughout. And if we come over here to our input node, we can increase or decrease that distance. We can even go negative with the distance and make an offset on the opposite side. But no matter how we change, notice these end conditions are always lining up very nicely. So now let's take a look at some of the options of the offset curve command. First off, you have normal direction. Geometry average is going to be our default setting, and this is a very handy, I think the word used to describe it in the help file is intuitive, and I have to agree. This is a way for you to very quickly and easily create an offset without having to worry about which direction it's going to go. It's going to behave differently for planar and three-dimensional curves. Right now, of course, we have a planar curve. It all exists on a single plane. And the predictable manner in which it behaves is like so. If we are set to geometry average and we hit Apply, a positive distance is going to place the curve to the left of the original curve if you're looking down its direction. Meaning, remember, this is where we started the curve, so it goes off in this direction. So if you place yourself at the end of your curve, geometry average will place your offset curve to the left. Any curves to the right will be scaled out. Any corners to the left will be scaled in, as you can see here very clearly. So if we were to change our distance, make it negative, we get just the opposite effect, like so. Now, geometry average is going to behave a little bit differently if our curve is not planar. Let's say it has some kind of cool angle to it, like so. And maybe this side comes up a little bit. So there's this really wicked shape that we're trying to offset. In this case, geometry average is going to take an average plane for this entire shape and then use the normals of that plane to calculate where the offset curve is going to go. So if I hit Apply, we get this. And that is because Maya calculated a plane, I'm assuming somewhere right in here, and used the normals of that to calculate. Sometimes not quite as predictable as you might like, but you can come in here and, whoa, don't double-click the tool, but bring your distance down a little bit. You can still get some nice curvature out of this. So definitely worth working with. Now your other mode for choosing your normal direction is going to be using the active view. And what this is going to do is just take your viewport into account. Now, take just a second and look at the curve we have here inside perspective. Forget for a moment that we're looking at this at an angle. Just pretend you're looking at it from dead on. We have a curve that comes diagonally up and over and like so. So just kind of lose your perspective for a minute and look at this in a two-dimensional sense. If I switch to active view and hit Apply, Maya is going to try to offset that curve very much in the way you would be viewing it if you assumed it was two-dimensional from this view. So it looks a little bit strange when you start rotating around it, but if you go back to your original camera position, you'll notice that it really is offsetting from the original shape of the curve from that view. And this particular setting is going to be a lot more predictable from orthographic views. Like from a top view, it's a lot easier to see what's going on. Now, another cool little feature of this, though, is that you can switch to either one of these, and when you hit apply, you do have the show manipulator tool by hitting the T key, and you can change that distance however you like. So just sort of an intuitive way here in the screen you can adjust your distance. All right, so moving down from here amongst all of our other settings. Of course, we have the offset distance, which I usually leave at a default distance of 1 and then change in the node, as you saw just a minute ago. We have connect breaks. Now, this is something that's not very easy to replicate or to show to you. Sometimes when you're offsetting a curve that has sharp edges, Maya will occasionally break the offset curve, the curve that you have created with this operation. It'll break it into separate parts, and this will tell Maya how to reconnect that curve back, whether you want a linear connection where it goes from one end of the break straight over to the other, or if you'd like a circular arc-style connection. In a lot of cases, you'll never get a chance to see this. It's actually kind of tricky to break up an offset curve like that, or you can switch it off and leave the breaks if you want to. Loop cutting is another very cool feature. This is a way for you to take any loops where the offset will loop back over itself and cut those away so that they're not a problem. And let me just real quick, I'll edit this shape like so, and then maybe we'll pull this in like so. So we have like an area of the curve that's really tight right here. Let's go ahead and just apply. Now check this out. If I increase my distance, you'll notice, that we're starting to lose a bit of that curve. Now, I can come over here to my attribute editor, and I have access to all of this. So loop cutting is set to this checkbox, cut loop, where if I switch that off, you can now see what's actually going on. The curve is looping back over itself because these sides of the curve here and here are so close to one another. They're actually closer than the combined distance from each side. So you can fix that by switching on cut loop, and that's going to just cut that away and make it disappear. Now, the problem here is that when you do this, you'll occasionally get these corners. This is where cut radius comes in, which you can see in the options, cutting radius like so, and also available here inside the node after the fact. Increasing this is going to create a circular fillet, like so, circular arc, like so, to take out those corners. And by default, here inside the node, it'll only allow you to slide up to 0.1, but you can punch in any number you want. I can set that to 0.5. You get nice rounding. So let's say we're setting up some city streets with NURBS curves. It'd be a nice little system to use. All right, so from here, we have max subdivision density. This is going to tell Maya how many times it can subdivide your offset curve to achieve the shape that it's going for. With a number of 5, that means each span of the curve can be subdivided 5 times to achieve your new curve. That's really all there is to it. A quick thing, real quick, that you're not going to see in the original settings, you have use given normal. This is going to allow you to change the normal of your offset. So if you wanted to set this to a custom value, custom number, you can do that here. Not the kind of thing I would probably play with too much, just because it does get a little bit predictable unless you have a really awesome understanding of punching in vectors. I never play with that personally. And back over here, we have tolerance, which we've already talked about on several tools. This is going to allow you to control the tolerance of accuracy, basically how accurate your offset curve is going to be to the original, using either the global or local tolerance. Global, you will find in the preferences window. If you go under settings, and you'll see the positional tolerance is set to 0.01 or 100th. If you need something finer than that, or maybe not quite so precise, you can set over to local, and you can override that global tolerance by changing this to any number you like. Finally, you have curve range. This is whether or not you want to offset the complete curve, or just a partial area of the curve. And this is very, very cool. Let me delete out this part of the curve we have here. We'll reselect the curve. I'm going to switch over to partial and click apply. Now, by default, nothing special just happened. I can take my distance and increase it, or let's just use the show manipulator tool. So I have something very similar to what we had a second ago, but I'll leave it like so. We also have a new node that was created, a subcurve node. And what this allows us to do is specify a min value and a max value where we can control how much of the curve was actually offset. And because I have the show manipulator tool handy, I have 2 manipulators that I can adjust very intuitively to control how much of the curve is actually offset. So let's say we only wanted to offset this little bend in here, where I can take these guys, pull them in, pull this guy back out, and that's all we've offset. You will notice from time to time that as you start working with this, sometimes the curve will flip. Don't worry about that. Just come over to your distance, Take whatever your distance happens to be and invert it. Set it to a negative number, and now it jumps to the inside. So this is a very handy tool, especially when you get deeper and deeper into NURBS modeling and trying to create shapes. Definitely remember it. Play with some of these settings. Get used to them. And I think that's going to wrap things up for this video. Thanks a lot.